Welcome to the Whitefish Community Development Board. This is a work session for the economic development element of the growth policy update. And for this, we'll turn it over to Alan Tiefenbach.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Community Development Board. This is Alan Tiefenbach, long-range planner with the City of Whitefish. I'm the one that's the project manager on Vision Whitefish 2045. I'm going to give you just a little bit of background on kind of what the process is and where we're at, and then talk a little bit about the economic development element. What I want to do first is this is super basic, okay, but this is the general skeleton of the way that, as is right now, Vision Whitefish 2045 is going to look. So there'll be an executive summary that's going to run through pretty much what the plan is saying, and it'll have the goals and the policies and the implementations and all that. Then there'll be an introduction, background saying, and demographics. That'll be a whole overview of the city, and it'll talk all about what the plan is, and there'll be history and mapping and the climate and all that, everything about Whitefish. There'll be the vision statement. That's what we've been working on for the last 3 or 4 months, where we've been having all these different visioning sessions. And this visioning statement will be a general statement about the city based on what we were hearing. And then the vision statement is going to have these vision themes that are going to relate to each element of the plan. You're going to see an example of one of those vision themes tonight. It's a little bit backwards because of we've been working through all the visioning right now, and there's just so much information I have to get through. You'll see the actual complete vision statement, the whole thing, at your August meeting during the work session there. So I'll present that to you. What you're seeing tonight is just going to be an example of a vision theme statement for economic development. Then there will be a section on implementation. So after we've written all the plan elements, we will go through there and we will look at the goals and the objectives, and we'll see which ones are action items, and we will start to put together an implementation schedule. It'll say short-term, mid-term, long-term, which agencies are the ones that would do that. And then finally, anything like this consultant report that you've heard about would be an appendix into this plan. So far? So again, I think it's kind of important to just kind of describe this, because we're coming into this not from the beginning, kind of in the middle, and there's lots of different pieces all happening at the same time that we're weaving together. When I talk about plan elements, there's 5 plan elements that are required by the Montana State Legislature. Now, we can add more. One of the ones that I'm looking at that we'll discuss is whether there should be a 6th one talking about cultural resources and history. There may be, but these 5 here are what are required by the Montana Legislature. And there's some very specific requirements in regard to what we need to do with that. So when I talk about the plan elements, that's kind of the meat of the plan. Those are the themes where there's actually goals and objectives, talking about how we're going to meet whatever the vision statements are for each of those themes. And when we get into the plan elements, this is basically what each plan element is going to look like. So it'll all be one chapter called the plan elements, but there'll be 5 of them, and all 5 of the elements are going to be set up in this way. So there'll be a summary page, and I included, I'll show you in a second what that looks like. There'll be a vision theme statement, and that is the theme statement for that topic. Then there'll be like a couple paragraphs introduction, just a quick overview of what this is. And then there'll be the goals and objectives, and those are what have been formed from all of the research and the data that we've been doing in regard to what the issues or what the aspirations of the community are to try to meet those goals. If there's any pertinent maps, those will be included. And then at the end, there'll be a complete write-up talking about whatever the supporting information is for that section. So far, so good? And then if there's mind-numbing things like statistics and facts and figures and reports and all that stuff, that would go in the back in an appendix. Okay, so to talk about the economic development element, MLUPA, the Montana Land Use Planning Act, requires that a growth policy includes an economic development analysis. These are the things that MLUPA says we have to do. So looking at the potential enterprises, we have to look at the composition, the labor force, what the trends are, We have to inventory sites, assess what local characteristics support or constrain future type commercial enterprises, assess the existing facilities needed to support them, and then look at the financial feasibility of being able to do that. So these are actual requirements as listed by the state legislature. In 2003, we contracted with a consultant, GSBS Consulting, to provide this analysis. And I actually have that consultant is standing by, even though I'm making the presentation, just in case you have some questions about some of the data that I've been using. So in 2023, we contracted with them, and they sent out a list of, I think, 30-something stakeholders, and 25 of them got back to them and worked directly with them. So they had personal meetings with these 25 stakeholders. And they've also met with the city leaders. They've had numerous calls with us over this period of, well, 6-9 months now. What I've listed in the bottom here are the actual specific stakeholders that have been involved in these discussions and participated in this economic development study. So based on that discussion, there were certain topics that emerged in regard to economic development. Obviously, one of them is attainable housing. That's kind of the theme just over and over and over again. And then how to diversify the economy and where the growth and opportunity areas are. Tourism, obviously, that's kind of the elephant in the room, right? Tourism is the biggest contributor to our economy. It's also highly seasonal. Doesn't pay the high wages that a lot of those primary type jobs are paying. So how do we diversify beyond tourism? Talking about the downtown area and or any commercial expansion, and then what kind of infrastructure needed to be done, and policy. And policy would be what kind of growth policy, or for this purpose, I'm going to start getting us used to the term community plan. So what kind of recommendations our community plan can say towards that? There was a draft that was submitted, and it is also available on the Engage Whitefish site. So you can see that draft. The entire report is done. We've gone back and forth, and have talked to us, meaning the staff of the applicant, and the consultant have gone back and forth on that many times to tighten things up. Okay, so when I talked about the snapshot or the summary at the beginning of all the sections, this is providing you an example, okay? So when you open up the plan elements section of this, so again, economic development, land use, housing, public facilities, environment hazards, and natural resources, those 5 required chapters, this kind of page is what you're gonna see as the front page. This could change as there's comments. This is based on the best information that I have available now. That came from the consultant on this report, as well as several other economic development studies in the past. But predominantly, what you see here came from the economic development study that served as the basis of this plan element. So every plan element chapter will kind of have this little pretty graphic to kind of say, this is where the city of Whitefish is now. I think it's kind of helpful to help people get there without having to go into this. So I'm getting to a point back with economic development. I want to back out for a second and talk about a vision statement, because you guys have heard me talking about this. And by the way, since it's a work session, if you want to stop me, feel free, because I talk and I can tell I always take a breath in between sentences. So
Too concerned about the speed of your delivery.
I'm a very fast talker. So.
I've never heard anyone say, no, slow down.
Yeah, or nobody's ever said, Alan, speak up either, so there's that. Okay, so the visioning sessions that have been ongoing for quite some time are really intended to get an idea of how do the citizens see Whitefish? What's important, what's not important, what do they like, what do they not like, what are the issues, what are the things that need to be fixed? And like I said, there's going to be an overall vision statement in the plan, and that we're working that, and we're pretty close to done. I'm just finishing up all of the huge amount of data from these visioning sessions. The visioning sessions data is going to be a lot more than just the visioning statement. There's a ton of recommendations about infrastructure improvements and all this other stuff that will be used as we move forward on like the transportation section and stuff like that. But a lot of those surveys that you saw, what's important, what do you value, and those kinds of things, those are super helpful to actually form a statement. What are the things that are important to you about the economy, for instance? So there's an overall vision statement for the city. Then there will be these vision theme statements. And we're going to right now have 5 themes, 5 vision theme statements, which are going to correlate with the 5 elements. Does that make sense? And again, you'll see a complete version. I didn't want to give you the whole one yet because I didn't want to get caught up in talking about that yet because we're not there. But I'm just kind of giving you the basic idea of what it's going to be, and you will see this in August. Okay, so there'll be the vision theme statements, and then those vision theme statements will be kind of the header of each of these themes, and will state this is how the city or how our community feels about this topic. Okay, so for instance, now we're going to have the main theme, the city of Whitefish values data. This is what we are for the year moving toward, and we're going to and we have 5 themes that get us there. And one of these themes is going to be supporting a robust economy. And the kind of the statement here, so this will be like the start of the element. And they'll say, we will continue to support our local businesses, because that's what I heard over and over and over and over again. Was not we need more tourists. No, we don't need to, I keep hearing we need to bring it into the shoulder seasons. But what I've heard over and over and over again is what makes us special is our local businesses. So we will continue to support local businesses. I kept hearing about innovation and incubation. So find innovative ways to diversify our economic base beyond our visitor economy to accommodate current and future commercial enterprises. And then I heard this a lot, and this is actually in the original vision statement in the 2007 plan, very similar, while protecting our unique character and qualities, because I heard that. How do you do economic development? How do you support tourism while still protecting what we love about Whitefish? And I'll talk a little bit about that in the vision statement. We will be self-sufficient and provide a full range of goods, services, and jobs. So as I go through this, I'm not looking for a vote on anything tonight. I'm just kind of presenting this to you to let you know where you're at, to see if you're generally like the direction that we're going, or if you think we're not going in the right direction. That's kind of, I'm just putting out my feelers. Yes?
So I do like this vision statement a lot, but I think potentially putting in the words year-round or all season could make it encompass that shoulder season feel that people have.
So add
occasionally.
year-round?
Year-round or all seasons, maybe in the last sentence, a full range of year-rounds, goods, services, and jobs, or stick it in somewhere else, but that could just encompass the whole year.
Easy to do, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Anything about this? I mean, again, this, I know it just looks like a couple of sentences, but there's a lot more to it than you would think, because we had to try to really capture what people are saying to us. This is what we want our economy to be. Does anybody disagree with this statement?
No, it's very good.
Okay, all right, just again. Okay, so here's where it gets, I'm going to try to not put everybody to sleep. But what we're working on right now, so we've got the snapshot, which is what I just showed you. So this is pretty close to what you're going to see the front page of the economic development section. And so there's going to be a whole lot of information. Then we're going to get straight to the plan elements. You're going to see this is the first page. Then you're going to see this on the second page with this vision statement. You're going to see about 3 or 4 paragraphs just summarizing everything that I've been able to sort of get about the economy in Whitefish. And then you're going to see these goals and these objectives. And the goals and the objectives were very carefully crafted from all of the economic development studies, what all the consultants were telling us, previous growth policies data, and these will be used either for city positions, for work programs, for making regulations. Does that make sense? So the first one I heard over and over again was encourage a diverse year-round base economy that provides a full range of jobs, goods, and services. One of the things that the consultant talked about is looking at specific places to grow and expand. The problems that we're having now with the development pressure for sites that right now are zoned or designated for industrial, and we're getting we're getting development pressure to take some of our best commercial sites or some of our designated industrial sites and just designate it all for housing, right? Is one of the things that we heard. So, our concern is we don't, do we need more market rate housing, or if we're going to do that, should there be a public benefit? So, there's a statement in there about if we have existing commercial properties, if we have existing industrial properties, that if we're rezoning that for a residential use, there needs to be some kind of significant public benefit in that, which could be workforce housing. Yes, sir. Should I, Dave?
Phil, can you turn your microphone on and re-ask that?
Right. I'm going to let Dave answer that one, just because.
Okay, there we go.
Just only because I want to know what we can and shouldn't say publicly.
There's quite a, the state legislature basically made it so that anywhere that we have commercial property, that we have to allow multifamily and mixed use as a use by right. So suddenly, the properties that we did have commercial, and we had started loosening those up for like second floor residential in some of our zones, like the B1, which is out on Wisconsin Avenue, knowing that we wanted more housing and wanted to encourage people to do that. But with the state's new rule, there's not much we can do, for commercially zoned stuff, which we have a limited amount of. It's for a while there, it looked like the B2 had a lot of extra room out there, and there's still a little bit. But that's all we got. And once that stuff fills up, there's no more room to grow, right? And at that point, I'm not sure when that point's going to happen. There's also some industrial property around the city, kind of over by the Wave in that area, up those hills and along, Baker Street, that may or may not be the highest and best use for industrial, but that's what it's zoned right now. But part of looking at doing an economic development studies, you're looking at what kinds of industry can we bring here to bring high-paying jobs. It's not just getting affordable housing, but it's also bringing in jobs that are, pay much better than service industry jobs, so that the people that live here can actually, make a decent living and afford to live here. And some of those areas out there that are undeveloped, that have that industrial zoning, there is pressure to change that to something that can build housing, rather than keep it for industry. We noticed out on Edgewood, there's a property out there, there's their old tree farm where 2nd Street crosses the tracks. That had a rail spur on it, very, very desirable for some kind of industrial property that could utilize the rail system. A year or two ago, we had the owners came in and got it changed so they could put in, apartments in that area, and workforce housing, which may or may not be the best use, but we also gave up, one of the things that we have that other communities don't, which is a rail line and a possible rail spur, which is really hard to develop a new one. It's, $2 million or something to even think about it. And we had one right there already. So there's things like that where that we don't have things in our goals and objectives in our current growth policy that helps us protect those types of things when developments do come forward. Idaho Timber Site was a good example. Again, a rail spur there. We tried to keep it industrial, but over time that project's morphed into, condos and more residential units. And so, trying to keep an eye on that for the future, because, industry can be important. We don't want to have all our eggs in the tourism basket.
Right. The two of the economies that, if you read the study all the way, the two industries that were projected for growth were healthcare and manufacturing. And when I say manufacturing, I don't mean like heavy industrial widgets, but more your research and development and those kind of industries. So we have a limited amount of those properties, and we want to make sure that if there are proposals to rezone those, then it's done very thoughtfully, and there's some benefit as well.
Thank you, Alan.
Has the economic study been made available?
Yes, sir. It's on the engagement site.
Okay.
It was also in the packet linked to the agenda.
It was at the end of in the packet that I sent. It was at the back of the staff report. It's 40 pages.
Okay, I will look for it.
Is that answered that question?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want me to read through all of these, or do you want me to? It's up to you. I can just kind of summarize it, is what I'm thinking. Talk about what's going on with these, and if they catch your eye. Yeah, all right, I'll just kind of hit them. So there's been a lot of talk about trying to figure out how to do incentives to get businesses into the town. There's been a lot, if you look at the study, there's a lot of discussion about the need to diversify for businesses and goods and services, especially along Spokane, Highway 93. The zoning there, the WB2 zoning is very, very restrictive. As we move forward into the requirements of the Montana Land Use Planning Act, it's actually going to get, we're going to have to really start thinking differently because we can't do things by conditional use anymore. They'll all have to be by right uses. So we'll have to really start thinking about crafting zoning to allow the types of uses that we need for the goods and services that benefit the city, and at the same time, figuring out how that we can keep the less desirable ones under control. There's been a lot of discussion about trying to get more of these these clean industries into Whitefish, and in a minute, when I go down to the local, there'll be some recommendations kind of how to start doing that. You guys follow me so far? Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I just realized. Okay, so that one actually, sorry, that sentence shouldn't say that. It's actually should say take advantage of local opportunities, basically. Can you see that? The second one, support local business on entrepreneurship opportunities is what I should say. So sorry, I've got the wrong language on that. So this is trying to capitalize on our local advantages. So one of them, Dave just talked about, coordinate with BNSF and compatible industries to find what available land is, trying to figure out how to get primary job creating enterprises, and there's different ways, like with timing and infrastructure, or what type of, certain types of businesses lend themselves to those types of industries more than others. There has been a lot of discussion about, we don't have an economic development person in the city or for the city. We've got Explore Whitefish, but we really don't have our own economic development person. Now, I think that this has been expanded, that new long-range planner housing job.
Yeah, so our housing planner took a job in Minneapolis, and we, Dana, city manager, and I revised that job description to include economic development as well as some multimodal transportation and things like that, as creating the position to become a resiliency planner, really looking at the resiliency of the community as it goes forward long term, making sure that Whitefish stays relevant, not just with the environment, but the economy, housing, and all those things. And so we are looking at that. I mean, that position's open until June 22nd, and hopefully we get some good applicants. But anyway, so we are working towards that, but that is something that's a goal in here.
So support local businesses and entrepreneurial opportunities is basically what it says. So create a city staff position, create a group, a network. Let me put this back in. Create a group, a network, or a committee that has constant conversations for specific areas of growth with municipalities. That's one of the things that the study talked about is coordinating kind of an economic development forum where representatives or representative with Whitefish can coordinate with other people in that sector to try to figure out how we can sort of utilize our sources better. And then pursue grants and partners and look at how we can establish business incubators that would be specific or local to Whitefish in general. So again, this one talks about how can we take advantage of our local opportunities. So here's another one. So Flathead Community College, there could be some possibilities to look at the community college or some local schools and see if we can whether we can get them involved in workforce development. Look at some of the lower cost enterprises. You're seeing a perfect example, although unfortunately I don't know if it's lower cost with the new food truck park that's gone in, but there are different types of pop-up shops. Those are shops that are in existing buildings, or food trucks, or using underutilized buildings, trying to have lower cost businesses. One of the things that we heard a lot in the economic study is that locals don't really have anywhere to go that's affordable, anywhere to eat, anywhere to buy clothes. Most of it's all set up for tourists. Part of that is a function of our zoning. Our zoning doesn't allow it along 93. And part of it is just the land cost in the downtown and the kind of businesses here. Yeah, another one is to look at putting in some regulations that when you are putting in subdivisions for commercial buildings or doing some kind of commercial expansions, you have to start thinking about putting in the conduit for or the high-speed internet, so that we can start moving to more broadband in the city, because not all the city has that kind of broadband. And then when we start looking at crafting our future zoning, looking at how we can allow some of these, I've been hearing in these visioning sessions about more neighborhood commercial, more commercial that's a small scale corner store type stuff. So I don't know where that's going to be or what that's going to look like, but that is again one of the economic development things that I've been hearing. So far so good? Anybody, any deal killers yet? Anybody? Nobody's got their face palming, so that's good. Okay. Third, I heard a lot of times about how important our downtown core is. It says it in our original growth policy. We've got a downtown business plan. We've got an economic development study that was just recently done that talks about it. People love the downtown. So this would be a general policy. It would be maintaining zoning consistent with the kind of uses. We have a downtown plan, but all the zoning doesn't exactly match that plan. There's land uses that are in that plan, and then we have zoning that doesn't exactly match it. That's one of the things that we're going to eventually do once we're done with the community plan, is to start working on zoning that's consistent with what the downtown plan is. There's been a lot of talk about an overlay district in the downtown, more to protect character. So that would be like building scale, massing design, streetscape kind of things. There's been a recommendation that there could be some kind of maximum allowances on the same types of businesses, so we don't have all art galleries or all diamond stores. You can only have so many of them in the downtown. One of the things we heard about is people go downtown, locals don't go down there anymore because there's really nothing for them to get down there anymore. Parking is a huge issue, if you didn't know that. We've got a parking management plan, but there's also been some discussion about whether we can move forward on a parking program that maybe has a paid parking that tries to, along some of the more strategic streets, that turns around parking quicker so that people aren't parking there for hours and hours and hours. Again, that would be an action we would work at a later date. And then obviously there's been a lot of discussion about transit in and out from Whitefish and Kalispell and some of our adjacent communities in and out of the valley. So this is just a general policy statement that says we would support that. So far, so good? Protecting the natural resources. When you remember, I gave you that vision statement, and we talked about the character of Whitefish. I mean, what draws people to Whitefish are lots of things, but our natural environment is at the top of that list. And if you love a place to death, then suddenly it's not so fun to come anymore. Anybody that's had to get a reservation to go into Glacier understands what I'm talking about with that. So the time and time again, we heard about people either coming here to visit because of our natural resources, or the residents that live here and they love that. So there's different things we can do. One of the things we're doing actually right now, we're working on the natural resources, environment, and hazards element of the plan. So this kind of lends itself to that. This also kind of lends itself to the sustainable tourism plan that you've been hearing about. But this is basically a general policy to work with the Chambers of Commerce, Department of Natural Resources, Fish and Wildlife, and Parks, to look at ways how we can promote tourism, but it's more sustainable without endangering the our natural resources. A lot of that is going to be basically just leaning on the sustainable tourism plan. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. If you've looked at that plan, they do have different mechanisms on how to do that, but we wanted to make sure we mentioned it in this, just so that the readers knew that plan was there, and that we will be working with them in the future trying to figure out how the city can embrace tourism at the same time with the least amount of impact to the residents and still protect what's important about Whitefish. Make sense? Heard a lot about farming, and I heard some about farming. And again, I'm working on the natural resources section right now, and there's going to be some other policies in regard to that. But in the existing 2007 growth policy, it does have a little bit of discussion about farming. We certainly think that still is a matter of economic activity. Our farmers market is a huge economic draw for the city, but we want to have more than just a little tchotchkes. We'd really like to have community gardens, and as we're losing more and more farmland, we think it's going to be more important that cities are going to have to start having smaller farm plots and kind of being more involved with their own agriculture. So this is supporting organic and other kind of farming as a means to broaden the community's economic base to preserve the rural character. One of them is to map active local agricultural operations as part of the database. I've already kind of done that. since I written this policy. I'm still checking how accurate it is. Right now, I think I have 8 actual small-scale farms or ranching operations in the planning area. That's not like counting the community gardens, but this is actually little farms or those kinds of things. Protecting existing operations through agricultural indemnity statements on plats, so there'll be plat notes or conditions of approval. When we get into the natural resources section, there's some even more specific recommendations on how we can not lose all of our ag land and at the same time respect private property rights. So how with the amount of development pressure we get on these huge ag properties, how do we recognize people want to develop these and at the same time not lose all the ag land? So that's one of the things we're working on. It could be a design function. And then finally, this would be kind of a work program, and I don't know yet what it would be, but look at incentives for the growth and retention of localized agriculture. So that was a lot that I just threw at you. Kind of something like alphabet soup here. I'm not sure where you want to go with that, but that's kind of a general overview of the economic development, the first part of the economic development section. You've got the first 4 or 5 pages in your packet along with the full report that was submitted. What would happen now is based on whether you believe we're going in the right direction or not, we would start crafting the next section, which would be environment, natural hazards, and resources. Environment, natural resources, and hazards based on the same kind of format. And then in the fallish, winterish, we would hopefully be bringing 2 complete sections to you. So the first half of them would be what you're seeing. And then basically what you would see is the second half would just be all the supporting data, that basically summarizing whatever reports or whatever is rationalizing the goals and the objectives. Does that make sense? With that, I'll stand for any questions or comments.
Anybody have a comment or a question? I have one comment, and I'm sorry that I didn't mark exactly where it was. I enjoyed reading the 44 pages, or I guess I should say skimming a bit. But in one spot, it definitely said the winter ski industry was the most or the highest employed job. And then in another spot, it sounded like the summer tourism industry was, so I don't know where those are. I can look. But those were 2 things that stood out to me, and I know that year by year probably fluctuates, and one may be employee number, and one may be number of tourists and income generated, but those were 2 things that caught my eye, and I'm sorry I don't remember exactly where they were.
So my understanding is the biggest employer in the city is Logan Health. They have the most full-time jobs, and they also have the most highest paying jobs. Whitefish Mountain has about the same number of jobs, but those aren't year-round, and they pay a whole lot less. I believe Sean with GSBS is online. Sean, do you have any comments, or can you hear what she's saying?
Yes, I heard. Yes, to introduce myself, my name is Sean Hill. I'm a planner with GSBS Consulting. Your summer season definitely is your peak season. In the introduction and overview, we do note that there is a bump during ski traffic during the Christmas season. So, Madam Chair, I don't know if that squares with your recollection, but that's what jumps out at me as to the source of your comment.
Sean, the dates of your study are somewhat old, at least from my recall. Just a little bit before COVID and then 3 years of COVID. Have those results been, or that information being updated in the last year or 2?
Yes. So the range of data runs from 2000 to 2023, and there are various data sources, but other than the stakeholder input data, which is qualitative, which is people talking to us. These are all primary data sources from the census, mostly from the American Community Survey of the Census Bureau. So as the Census Bureau updates these figures, they they will of course change, but my experience is that it'll be a continuation of a trend rather than a wholesale change, barring any notable event like a Great Recession or a pandemic.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do understand that was just a lot of information. Again, what we're looking for tonight is basically a general nod yes or a rigorous head shake no, that we're going in the right direction with this, because this is the first portion of the economic development plan. We're kind of building off of this from here.
Well, I like to say that having passed through Bozeman last weekend, I'm very encouraged by what we're doing here in Whitefish versus how Bozeman has been totally decimated with new businesses. It was just, I was flabbergasted. The old town was not the old town. And that happened rather quickly.
So this is just kind of a run through. I'm not going to stop, but I just want to kind of show you. We're going to have the summary. We're going to have the vision statement. There'll be a write-up there. It'll have the goals and the policies that I just talked about. And then there'll be a background section here, which is still in the works, that I'm working on, that will be kind of all the justification for that section. So we weren't just pulling this out of the air. We did all the research. We're just still finalizing the entire thing. But the element is mostly done. We're just getting it formatted and going to be sending it out for everybody to review it and all that. Yes, sir.
Well, the red is on. So whether you're going in the right direction or not, I have no idea. I don't know what other directions you might be going. It seems fine, but I'm not very sophisticated in all this.
Me neither, which is why we hired a consultant to help us. We're definitely. I recommend you read the report because
I will. I didn't
the
know I
section
had
that
it.
I'm writing here is really going to be heavily weighted on that. There won't be any surprises. The policies and the goals that you see. I read all of the economic development stuff. We've had basically three. We had one that was done with the US 93 South Plan. We did one for some properties on Baker Street some time ago, and then we did this one. I also read both of our 1996 and our 2007 growth policies, and then I read the growth policies of way too many other places to kind of get some ideas. But for the most part, this section heavily leans on the market study that you've got in your packet.
Yeah, for example, preserving agricultural lands against the huge pressure for putting housing on them instead. I have no idea of a solution to that. I've never seen one.
There's different things we can do. It could be a function. First of all, we don't. If somebody wants to annex into the property, one of the questions is if there's a piece of prime farmland that wants to annex into the city, do we annex them? Or there's a land use infrastructure connection. Do we put in transportation and infrastructure in places that's going to drive growth in prime farmland before we have looked at areas where there could be better infill? There could be taking land and designing it so it's clustering to preserve some of the better pieces, or even encouraging maybe in some of our subdivision regulations that if a development puts in a community garden, they get some kind of benefit for their landscaping. So there's different things we can do. If I solved it, I'd probably be working for the Department of Agriculture. But there are things that cities and municipalities are doing.
Well, that's a
Also-
good answer.
Also,
Very
the
good
future
answer.
land use map, when we get into the more detailed land use section, I mean, we have areas that the city has our WA zoning, which is 15-acre minimum lot. Well, you know, if you have a 15-acre lot, you're much more likely to use that for agriculture if you can't go any smaller than you are if you have a 1-acre lot zoning, you know, and you can subdivide that out into 15 lots. So when we look at the land use map, we're going to really have to take some time to look at some areas like Monaghan Road and Caro Avenue, some of those other areas where there's still some larger lots out there that could be potentially still used for agriculture, and take a good look at, you know, where we want our housing versus where we want to maintain agriculture, because that's really going to be, you know, the crux of a lot of it. Because, you know, if you have agricultural big acre lots, then you have that open space and things that people want to see on the fringes of town. But we also have to identify the areas that are close to city services or water and sewers close, where we could redevelop those areas, you know, into housing that we need to. So that's going to be part of your guys' job and our job as we move forward with this plan, and we get into the nitty gritty of the land use portion of it to really determine which of those areas you want to save. And there are groups out there. There's a nonprofit called Save Farmland that's putting a bunch of farmland in conservation easements. There's quite a bit of it around the city, and it's every day it's growing. They just got a new parcel donated to them that keeps it in perpetuity agricultural land, and then they have a basically a farmer incubation plan where they can help young farmers get set up. They provide the tractors and the cold storage and even the farmsteads to be able to sell the produce and help people along and get them started to incubate, you know, new farmers and new opportunities for farming. So there's groups like that are local to Whitefish that are working on that stuff, and certainly helping, you know, groups like that to move forward with things. With conservation easements is, you know, part of the goals and objectives. I think that stuff that you guys read tonight can help towards.
And on another matter, it's 5:45, and when I tried to get in, the doors were locked. There was a guy with a pass that's been taken care of? Okay.
Have you done any investigation as to potential economic development of areas that might be good to bring in? Like, you know, our biggest thing right now is the hospital, but I know one of our residents has ambitions to build a biotech research facility here, and other avenues like that. Have you considered, you know, we've got south of us here is applied materials, and although I don't know as we want manufacturing, but research and development into computer chips and things like that. You know, you sort of made a list of other potential economic areas.
Well, you know, Montana West Economic Development, you know, is a valley-wide group that works on that and tries to work with people. You know, we really don't have an economic development task force or team or person within the city that's actively trying to recruit businesses into the town.
Well, not necessarily
but this-
saying to recruit
But there are,
businesses,
well, I
but to
mean,
just
but
make a
there
list
have
of-
to be places to be located. They have to have the right infrastructure. They have to have, you know, transportation if they're manufacturing. You know, they have to have high-speed internet if they're doing tech work. And there are some of those businesses that have come and approached us in Whitefish and talked about different things. And some of those have ended up going to places like Columbia Falls or Kalispell where there's less regulation. They didn't have to go through a public process like a conditional use permit in order to do it. That scares people away. You know, so there's a lot of different things, you know, as a city that we need to look at. Like, how do we draw those things in? What kind of regulatory things can we make it easier for the kinds of business we want to be able to operate so that they don't have these hurdles that then make them look in other communities where land's a lot cheaper, because the Whitefish,
What I was
the
referring
dirt's
to
really
is
expensive
basically,
here.
do you have a list of potential opportunities?
We don't have a list because it's, you know,
Okay.
there's
Well,
always
like he mentioned.
private
this,
market, but we have,
economic development company that isn't in Whitefish, but, you know, they may provide more information, because there could be, you know, economic companies or things that just hadn't come to mind.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, I don't have that list. We know the types of businesses that are growing. We know some of the areas that are suitable for it. We know that there needs to be a position or a group that does this. I don't have the list of people that I can call
Okay.
at this point. But 100% I'm with you. I know, I mean, there's also constraints. One of the things that they were told time and time again, when they met with the stakeholders, are the cost of business, that the housing issue and the restrictive zoning made them not want to come into Whitefish. So there's certain things that we can do as well. I'm not sure if that's a good answer, but I don't have the list yet, Toby.
I guess I have one quick question. Somewhere I read, and I don't think it was in any of these materials, and forgive me, I can't remember where it was, but it caught my eye that somewhere in the 20 to 30% range of people felt like only 20 to 30% felt like the tourist economy in Whitefish enhanced the quality of life. Maybe
No, you're right. It was in a survey that was done for the Sustainable Tourism Plan. I think they said in 2019, it was like 70% of the people said that tourism benefited Whitefish. And then in 2023, it was something like 30% agreed with that statement. So there's been a huge drop in the feelings towards whether tourism is good or bad.
and there seems certainly to be a strong subtext throughout this whole planning process about that's the primary basis of our economy, is that tourist economy. How is that, how are you squaring those two things?
Well, again, if you read the I don't know if you have read the market study yet, but that's kind of the charter of that study, is looking at what we can do to diversify beyond a tourism economy. There's numerous things we can do. There's a land use function, there's a zoning function, there's putting together economic development teams, there is changing our zoning and some of our regulations. That is kind of the $1 million question. That
Okay.
the entire study is full of recommendations on what things that we can do to step out of the way to try to encourage other types of businesses to come to Whitefish.
At the beginning of your answer, you referenced a study. You said it too quickly for me.
The market study that was included with the staff report. If you look in your staff
Market
report,
study.
yeah, that study so this economic development section is based on a lot of the recommendations of that study, and that study basically there's a few things it does, but one of the primary things it does is talking about how we can position ourselves to have more of a year-round primary job type economy and not your visitor economy.
And that's a different study from the economic
No, that is
consultants
the study that I'm referring to.
That
same
is
study.
by the consultants in Salt Lake.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
There's also a sustainable tourism master plan that the city council
Yeah.
just
Right.
adopted an update to on Monday that,
Right.
that talks about those same issues too.
And that's the one that first of all talks about how can we have a visitor economy with the least amount of impact on the city, more sustainable, and it's the one that has the statistics that Scott was talking about how the sentiment for tourism has dropped greatly between 2019 and now.
Any other questions or comment from the board?
Don't forget to have public comment on this.
Okay. So we'll have a public comment period. Anybody who's been here long enough or has reviewed this and would like to come up and comment on this can at this point, and please state your name and your address before you begin your comment at the podium. All right, I guess that concludes our meeting then. Alan, unless you have any other.
Nope, I just wanted to,
Works for
again,
us.
make sure I was getting thumbs up and not thumbs down as we keep moving forward. Everybody likes the direction that we're going. You like what we're saying. You kind of agree in general with the statements, and nothing is really giving you any heartburn.
Ellen, you mentioned that we do not have a person on staff who would solicit or market the city's vision to companies that might be entertaining a thought of moving here?
I'm hesitating because I never want to, like, for Dave, say we need to create more bureaucrat jobs. Don't know what that's going to look like yet. One of the suggestions is to either create a staff position, which could be the new long-range sustainability planner position that's already existing, what Luke's position was. That's one of the new duties that they could be doing, is trying to attract economic development. One of the things that the consultant talked about that wrote on this report is that there's already the Northwest Montana, thank you, economic development, and we could utilize existing resources and try to see if we can all work together to try to attract different places, different people to different places, depending on, what the resources are. So yes, though, as is right now, we do not have any economic development specialist working for the city who's going out and trying to drum up business.
Thank you.
Giuseppe just let me know that there is a city councilor on that Montana West Economic Development Board to advocate for Whitefish.
Great.
All right, so go ahead, Alan.
So just real quickly for you or anybody that's listening, there won't be a work session in July, but in August again, we will be bringing the vision statement to you. So you'll have a complete vision statement saying this is what this Vision Whitefish 45 is what that vision statement will be called. This is what the city of Whitefish is. This is what's important to us. This is how we're going to do it. To give you an example, again, the one theme statement is this is the only theme statement I've shown publicly right now. This will be for economic development. We're working on getting all the results from the visioning, so I'll be able to show you some summaries of all of those meetings and some maps and some cool graphics and stuff like that. And then hopefully coming fall, you'll start seeing some more robust sections of a few different elements of the plan. So we're moving forward quickly. You just haven't seen it yet, but there is a lot written. That's it with me.
All right, thank you, Alan. And we will adjourn this meeting and then meet back here just after 6 o'clock to begin our regularly scheduled meeting. Thank you. All right, welcome everyone to our regular meeting for the Whitefish Community Development Board. It's June 20th, 2024, and the first item on our agenda is a call to order. So we will call this meeting to order. And then does anyone have any agenda changes for tonight? Seeing none. The next item is an approval of the May 16th, 2024 minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. So the minutes for May 16th, 2024 are approved. So everyone in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand. None opposed? All right, that motion passes. And next is communications from the public, and this is for items that are not on the agenda. So if anyone in the public has something to bring to our attention or a comment, you can come to the podium now and state your name and your address and let us know your thoughts. And this is anything that's not on our current agenda tonight.
Giuseppe Caltabiano, 2075 Lion Mountain Loop Road, Whitefish, Montana. Good evening. Thank you for serving. I come here every now and then. I enjoy watching you on YouTube, so I don't miss any single meetings of yours. Sometimes when I come here, I come with the purpose to remind this board that your focus has slightly changed due to a couple of Senate bills, but at the same time, your focus is on land use. It's not about, apart from the growth policy work session, your job is, I believe, discuss matters that are either quasi-judicial or legislative and recommend to City Council, hopefully in ways and finding of facts that are consistent with the staff. And if they're not consistent, they become consistent sooner or later. So that City Council should just rubber stamp your decisions unless new evidence surfaces between your meetings and the City Council meetings or the project has been changed. Recently, City Council has found themselves in front of a recommendation for denial of a project coming from this board while the staff was approving with certain conditions. And that put the City Council at a standstill because we do value your work. So my invitation to you is make that work count. And that means, sadly, studying the packets. That's work, there are hours before you guys meet. Reach out and follow the squirrel trails, because from the packet there might be MCA's articles quoted and you need to go study them, or precedents that of jurisprudence, so to call it. So my invitation is please, please, please keep doing this job deeply and seriously, because you are the next step, the last step before City Council. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Any further public comment on items not on the agenda tonight? All right, seeing none. Any unfinished business? No unfinished business. So we'll move on to our public hearings, and our first public hearing is WCUP 24-05, and this is a request by Bill McKinney on behalf of the State of Montana Department of Transportation for a conditional use permit to expand the Whitefish Airport with an airplane hangar. And for this, we'll hear from Nelson for the staff report.
Thank you. So to provide an update from the May 16th Community Development Board meeting, so I got in contact with the MDOT Aviation Division. They provided the lease that I included in the packet and gave some information on how the leasing process works. So the agreement was worked out with the MDT legal department at a first come, first served basis. Only one hangar lease is planned at this time to keep the tie downs in the area for maneuverability of airplanes intact. They stated there's no direct benefit to MDT, but they're supportive of the development. The lease is for 40 years. And then following concerns brought up at the May 16th Community Development Board meeting, staff has added a condition to provide four parking spaces for the airplane hangar use, which amounts to one parking space for each airplane that the hangar provides for. So just to give a quick summary of what the project looks like. I know John wasn't present at the last meeting. There is a section of the Whitefish Airport that is in city limits. It's connected to the Wag Dog Park. The runway of the airport is in the county, but this particular parcel is in the city. The proposed hangar is 23 feet tall, 5,400 square feet large. 400 square feet is proposed to be an e-bike rental for pilots to be able to bike into town. Currently it is, there are a couple sheds on the property, and there are those existing plane tie downs that are in use. So yeah, the only extra conditions that I added, that staff added was John, just so you know, so there is no commercial or overnight parking allowed in public parks parking lots. And then because the city parks, that we do have an easement to access the Wag Dog Park for the public. So any areas impacted or disturbed by the boundaries of the easement area must be returned to its original condition. No work may take place on city property outside of the easement area. And then we added that 4 standard parking spaces must be provided for the airport use located on airport property. So there were no specified, we don't have specified standards for airport parking. So we defaulted to 1 per airplane use, because there were some public comments that were concerned with parking and people using the airport to run businesses and whatnot. So the first meeting I received 3 public comments. I received a few after my report. This time I received about 4 or 5 comments after my report. 2 were in support and 2 or 3 were in opposition. And this is a conditional use because this is zone WA, which is our agricultural zone. Airports are a conditional use in that zone, and this is by adding an airplane hangar that would be expanding that conditional use, and so that would that's why a conditional use permit is required at this time.
Thank you, Nelson. Any questions of the staff from the board?
Did you inquire of Angie or the city attorney regarding this or any aspect of it? And what did she have to say?
Yes, so the city attorney, she said that she supports, I put it in the packet, but the email, but that she supports that this is an accessory use of an airport, and that so hangars are an accessory use that could be granted with a conditional use permit. And she agreed that, just again, that the state, the state does lease out property to private citizens.
Have we done any investigation into any fire restrictions or anything? I think at the last meeting, we determined that there was no water out there, so there's no bathroom. Is there a fire hydrant? Is it nearby? Has the police or the fire department investigated that, and they said, yeah, it's no problem, or what?
So I did talk to the fire marshal. He did not have any concerns with it. He's since retired, so I have not been able to, contact him since. But any fire issues would be dealt with at the time of building permit. So the conditional use permit approval or recommend approving or denying it, the fire code would be dealt with at time of building permit. So they would need to meet fire code, building code, zoning, all when they submit for a building permit. So however they need to do that, that's when that would be met.
Yeah, I was just curious because one of the letters in opposition mentioned fire hydrants and various things in that area. Okay?
Nelson, you mentioned you mentioned that the structure would be 23 feet tall, and yet the lease from the state says 35. Why the discrepancy? Which is fine with me, but.
Yeah, so I did not catch that part in the lease. It probably has to do with the applicant submitted 23 feet in their application. The height limit in city limits is 35 feet. The height limit for accessory buildings is 24 feet.
Any further questions of staff?
I guess maybe I have one. So one of the, I think it must have been one of the late coming commenters talked about the, how this proposal fits in with the growth plan. Did you have a chance to look at that? And if so, what was your assessment of those comments?
Yeah, I did read through them. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the commenters was saying that there is a section to protect scenic views and vistas. I mean, it is zoned agriculture. It is an existing airport. It is the only place you can put an airport hangar besides an accessory building to your house, which at that point that's just a garage, a detached garage. But seeing that this would be the only building on the lot, so they pointed out this wouldn't be an accessory building, this would be the primary building, so the height limit would be 35 feet, but they did apply for a 23-foot building in the application. So.
Thank you.
All right, if no further questions from staff, now we'll hear from the applicant, which I know we heard from you last month, but we'd like to hear from you guys again, please.
Is this on?
Yes.
Okay. I think there were a couple comments from the previous meeting that maybe weren't accurate. I think a couple of the opposers mentioned that the building was 35 feet tall. It is not. It's approximately 23 feet tall.
So can you please state your name and address
Yeah,
to start?
I'm Christine Blyle.
Thank
I
you.
live at 617 Colorado Avenue in Whitefish. And so just to clarify a couple of the dissenters' comments that I think were inaccurate last time, so I didn't want to clear up any confusion. I think there was a couple statements that said that the building was going to be taller than it is being proposed. I think maybe the confusion came from the city height limits at 35 feet, where this building is approximately 23 feet. So for a point of reference, the Whitefish Airport sign that is currently on the property, it abuts the parking area. That sign itself is approximately 15 feet. So the proposed building is only 8 feet taller than that than the current Whitefish Airport sign. And as I traverse the site, I have a few points of data, if I will. The elevation height, meaning the elevation above sea level height of the Whitefish Airport sign is at 3,051 feet. The Whitefish hangar site is at 3,053 feet, so 2 feet higher potentially from the Whitefish sign. Dodger Lane at its highest point of elevation, which is kind of where it crowns, is at 3,069 feet. And Armory Road at the point of entry to the first house from the west on Armory Road is at 3,061 feet. So both Dodger Lane and Armory Road are higher in elevation than the airplane hangar that's being proposed. And the distances of both of Dodger Lane and Armory Road, from Dodger Lane, it is about 0.15 miles or 792 feet, which is longer than a standard city block. From Armory Road, it is approximately 0.177 miles, which is 934 feet. And that's actually to the back side of the current house on the western edge of Armory Road. Again, that's almost double a city block. And so for Vista, you know, a lot of people think in terms of heights as you're standing in front of it, not in perspective. But if we look at things with a natural eye and in perspective, from Armory Road, looking at the Whitefish Airport sign height, you would still see the first row of trees along Edgewood. So you would still see that row of trees. You wouldn't even have any view obstructed. And similarly from Dodger Lane, you can't even see the Whitefish Airport sign from Dodger Lane. It is already obstructed by the trees in the dog park. But in a couple points where you can see it, it is at a downward perspective. So you're still going to be able to have vista points to Glacier Park and to the Columbia Range. So I think, you know, I realize that when you're looking at it as maybe 2 feet from the building, it seems 23 feet is quite high. But as you start looking at it from different perspectives, it's quite diminutive in scale. So I just wanted to provide that data. Are there any other questions, I guess, regarding the hangar and any clarifications from the lease from the state?
Are you representing the state of Montana in terms of reviewing the lease?
No.
Is there someone here that is from the state of Montana to clarify any of the language of the lease?
No, the state of Montana was not available today.
Who then, if we have questions, will be able to answer those? I have numerous questions in reading the lease a number of times, and I'm confused at some of the language.
Well, the leaseholder is here, and that's William McKinney. So maybe he can answer.
But that's not the leaseor.
He's the leasee. Yes, he's the leaseholder. He's not the owner of the property. But again, just as a point of clarification, again, it's not uncommon to have a building or a property owned by an owner and have somebody that's leasing the property. The leasee is the applicant. And so, you know, I can name numerous public buildings or private buildings downtown where it might have an owner, but the leasee is the one that's going for the conditional use permit. Oftentimes that owner is not present, but the leasee is present. So the leasee here has negotiated the lease with the state.
I guess I'm confused from the May 16th meeting in that Mr. McKinney mentioned that the state would own the building as well as the land, and yet there is no statement to that effect in the lease presented to us from the state.
I believe Nelson just clarified that, and that's a 40-year lease.
Well, it's a 40-year lease on the building.
Right.
Yes, but who owns the building? You own the building. That's not what you stated last time, but that's okay. You stated last time that you would be paying for the building, but never mentioned ownership.
Well, I don't think that was an incorrect statement. He's still paying for the building.
All right, thank you, Christine.
Okay.
I mean, I have a number of questions to ask, but is this the appropriate time, Whitney? About
So
the lease, or can we ask the leasee questions then?
we can have the applicant come up and address, and then if there are questions, does that make sense, Dave, for us to be able to ask the applicant questions now? Anything that's part of the lease that he doesn't know, then we'll just defer to Nelson and perhaps even pull up the lease and read back through it, because it is a pretty clear, short lease that was included, and I think it is standard. So hopefully the applicant can answer, and then any questions that need to be kicked over to Nelson, we can do that at this time.
Yeah, I mean, typically you have to, you know, if the owner and the applicant have agreed on something, then, you know, you guys are reviewing the land use part of it, not necessarily the terms of the lease.
Mr. McKenzie, thank you. The lease was entered into on October 1st of last year, and yet you waited until May of this year to bring this to the board. Is there a reason for that 7-month delay?
Gosh, not exactly, other than the price of the steel building kit, I was hoping would go down a little bit.
I'm sorry?
The price of the building that I'm proposing to put up, I was hoping that the price of that may come down since price of steel has gotten so expensive. Hoping maybe that
So
would,
that was the reason for the lag time?
a little bit.
Okay. And the lease is good for 40 years. In case of your demise or passing, is this going to be extended to family members or a trust or what, sir?
I don't know. I believe they would review it after 20.
I never said that about 20 years, but the lease is for 40 years. It can be reviewed, of course, upon request, but in the event of your passing, who would take over that lease?
Possibly a family member.
When there are leaks or spillages inside the proposed hangar, how are they going to be taken care of?
Leaks or spillage of,
Fluids, pneumatics, you name it. I don't know, I'm not an airplane pilot or a mechanic, but certainly there are leaks that happen.
through oil absorption mitigation. It's not proposed as a maintenance facility either.
So in your estimation, there would be no maintenance done on those aircraft while they're in the hangar or outside of?
It's, yeah, yes, I would possibly change my own oil, engine oil. But we're not a service to maintain other airplanes. We're limited on what we can do to our planes.
In the lease, it states that the state can inspect at any time. Is there a scheduled time for inspections by the state or whomever to see for the
I
cleanliness?
don't
and-
believe there is a schedule.
In terms of water, et cetera, if someone were to have an accident and wound themselves, what would happen how would wound cleansing be taking place? Do we have like Petty John's Culligan water at the ready for any kind of that type of situation?
Oh, yeah, we'd certainly have, like a Culligan, water there. As far as maintaining a wound, a first aid kit
But
on site.
But in terms of washing wounds, I mean, that's pretty important as well. I mean, I'm not trying to be antagonistic, I'm just trying to look at future situations as they may develop.
Well, I would plan on having bottled water on site. In fact, I've talked to the state, and originally I didn't think they really wanted us to have water or sewer, and they're not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to the idea of running it there. In fact, I met with Public Works, and the sewer is not terribly far away from this building site. And originally I thought it was much further.
You're saying
And-
sewer is not terribly far away?
It's not.
How far is not far?
250 feet? 300? I'd have to measure it, roughly.
But in the lease, it says that there should be, there's containment or spillways, but you're not proposing that in your building?
Containment or spillways?
Yes.
There would be just, other than an oil absorption material.
In terms of insurance on the building and its contents, there was made mention of 300,000 and 600,000. Is that sufficient, or can that be reviewed? Because the price of certainly replacement of buildings, et cetera, parts and/or airplanes, pretty costly. Is there some larger indemnity clause that is
That
exercisable?
could be reviewed. That's, I believe that figure is what the state came up with.
Sorry?
I believe that's the figure that the state came up with as a minimum. And yes, it could be.
In terms of
Increased.
your bicycle rentals, last month you had said that you'd be charging for it, and yet in the lease it says donation. So can we have a clarification on that?
Well, yeah, there would be, some way to pay for the cost of the bike. I don't know, either through a donation or like a kiosk where you would come and the kiosk would charge the bicycle, you release it with a credit card, use it, put it back into the kiosk for, that would charge the,
And those monies would be going to you or the state or whomever?
that would be going to me to replace the cost of the bicycle.
So it would be a
In the end.
commercial enterprise if a kiosk was involved and a bicycle shop would be supplying those bikes?
We'd
For a
have them
rental?
on site, there would be 4.
Yeah.
fact,
There are
I-
only 4 bikes?
Yeah.
So what happens if there's 2 occupants in 2 different planes, and that's 4 right
Each.
there, and there are a couple of others?
4 available.
They walk.
In fact, I discussed this with the state earlier this week, and originally we thought that the electric bike would be a benefit to the pilots that came in and would be able to come in, you know, for lunch or dinner or spend the night. And if it's you know, if it complicates things too much, we could just eliminate the bicycles.
I guess one final question, Mr. McKinney, that is, you allege that the hangar will be open 24 hours a day. Does that mean that airplanes can't take off and land during darkness?
They cannot.
So why would it be open for 24 hours a day versus sunrise to sunset?
I'm not sure where that verbiage came from, other than I
It's-
would like access to the building 24 hours a day.
So it's just in terms of access, not an airplane takeoff and landings?
Correct. There's no lighting on the airfield.
Right.
We
That's
don't
why I was
propose
asking.
lighting on the airfield.
Thank you very much for answering my questions.
I have a couple of questions as well, but if you have a comment on previous comments, you can go ahead, Christine.
I do have one point of clarification, though. The state did say that they do visit the Whitefish airstrip once a year. They don't have a set date as to when they visit the airstrip and the airfield once a year, but they do make a once-a-year trip to review it, and that's from the Aeronautics Department.
Thank you. My question is concerning a restroom facility in water and sewer. It seems like now that we have access to the lease, the state is fine with it. It's just at your cost to install it, and then it has to be underground or under the building. Having a pilot lounge designated as a 20 by 20 spot seems very odd to have a lounge without a restroom. So at what point will you decide, yes, we will put a restroom, or no, we won't?
I'm not opposed to it. It's an expense to it. There is a public restroom within a couple hundred, within 100 yards of the building. We originally thought we could use that. And the pilot lounge is really, it's not so much of a lounge, you know, it's a place to get the bicycle to come to town. It's not really a lounge with couches and an area like, we did consider like a vending machine for bottled water or soda, crackers, but really a space large enough to house those bicycles and a place for pilots to come in, change their clothes, you know, geared up to come to town. And I'm not opposed to the bathroom at this point either. Originally, I didn't think the state was, wanted me to have the, you know, the sewer and water utilities there. And then also the expense of it, I thought it was much further away. But I wouldn't be opposed to putting it in there.
Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant? All right, so we'll now, thank you. You can take a seat unless you have anything else for us. Now we'll open the public comment, and if you have a comment on this from the audience, you can come up, state your name and address, and then give your comment.
Good evening, members. My name is Corey Seaman, 461 Armory Road. I've been in aviation my entire life, corporate jet pilot, so I do know insurance policies and the extent in aviation. And there was a letter that was a public letter that was addressed, and I just wanted to kind of review those. And there was some information that was slightly skewed. One being a flight school equating to over 50 landings daily. Being affiliated to both flight schools in the Valley, I know both chief pilots extremely well. Though they are allowed to land at the Whitefish grass strip, they're not exactly permitted for off-airport landings. So they may use it. You know, I spoke to an instructor about a week ago, and I think at best they do a low approach. They never actually land on the strip due to insurance reasons. It's an unpaved off-airport strip. Insurance is extremely costly, so they're contained mainly to their area at a Kalispell, both Glacier as well as Red Eagle, which is South Kalispell. So that is in no way, shape, or form, it isn't true. They do not utilize the strip. And there is no, there would never be a flight school that's based out of Whitefish as well. That was noted in one of these letters. With that as well, the letter also addressed turbine aircraft. Once again, turbine aircraft with retractable gear, that is a typical 99% of insurance companies do not permit, nor do they insure these aircraft to land on maintained strips. Whitefish is a perfect example. If you land off pavement, they will not insure you. So it is, I believe I've lived on the strip the last 7 years. I've seen one turbine aircraft. It is not common, and it will never be common. The helicopter, the gentleman addressed the helicopter, which is Glacier Air Tours. They've permanently been moved to Glacier National Park. So they rarely, if ever will operate. In years past, they have. They've purchased a hangar or leased a hangar, and they have their whole quiver based out of GPI. I do know the chief pilot extremely well, and they're doing their best in all capacity to operate solely out of GPI. So the thought of turbine aircrafts operating in and out of the strip, once again, Two Bear does utilize it for their training sessions, but as a commercial operation, that has ceased to exist. And let's see what we have here. E-bikes, around the U.S., typically you fly in and there is a donation-based, either courtesy car or e-bikes, and it's a very common thing. For e-bikes, once again, it seems like it's up to adjustment, whether the bikes are there or whether they're not. But on a donation-based, and once again, if there's 6 people that fly in, Uber is readily available in the Valley. So the Uber is extremely accessible. So I don't think that would ever cause an issue. Once again, I've spent a lot of time in maintenance facilities myself just over the years. The best way to clean a wound has been alcohol, to have a few rubbing alcohols on site. Obviously, if there's something more extent, you're going to the ER, right? So it's, along with spills, it's a great question. I currently own one of the messiest planes on the planet, and it drips a few few droplets weekly, and there's just a plastic bin underneath, and it never gets on the floor. So it's extremely containable, right? So it's just wanted to clarify that. Doing maintenance and whatnot. We cannot legally perform our own maintenance, so they do need to be flown out to Glacier GPI, where there's an A&P on deck that will certify and work on the aircraft for extensive wear and tear. But for your common spills, they're extremely rare, but they're extremely easy to contain. With that, my understanding, the fire hydrant, another great question. Once again, I live on 461. The closest fire hydrant is near the park, which is quite far away. So I believe that a fire hydrant would be closer to this unit than it is my own. But once again, I completely understand. The tie downs currently, there really are no tie downs. So with this, we'd love to put new tie downs in. There are current tie downs that are extremely old, that are dilapidated, and they're really unusable. It'd be great to address those, that the state has always wanted to do, and we've always wanted to do it, and it's extremely minimal impact, but just make it more friendly. Bottom line, this is my understanding, and I'm just a friend. This is not a commercial operation like the letter that was submitted suggested. Pretty much it's to store a few aircrafts from the harsh elements. For folks to come in and see the beautiful town that we have, catch an Uber, bike, walk, it's a very quick, easy walk, spend their money downtown. This strip has been utilized since the 60s, and the intent is to keep it in the same usage as the 60s. Let's see if I have anything else. My apologies. And one thing to clarify too, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but just to debunk the commercial entity of this, I believe that those permits come from the city. So when the skydivers were out there, I believe that city was bestowed, or the permit for them to operate was bestowed from the city. So you do control that. This is not a commercial operation, pretty much just to house some planes, have folks come visit, and keep it just a fun. There's really not a lot of strips like this in the world. Aviation is picket fence and gated, where the youth. I grew up seeing aircrafts fly, and it was from afar. And we just really want to keep it extremely friendly, open, and just maintained, and use it how it's been since the 60s. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Once again, just a friend, and read a letter, and there was some fictitious information that I wanted to clear up, or misinformed.
All right, thank you for your comments.
I have a question.
Absolutely, sir.
Do you have an airplane? And is
I
it
do,
gonna
sir.
be in
Yes,
this-
sir.
Is it going to be in this hangar?
No, sir. I live on 461, or at 461. I have my own hangar. I own the red biplane that flies around.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. I think
Absolutely.
that's it.
Thank you for serving. Enjoy your evening.
Any other public comment for this? Please come up to the podium. You can just come one right after the other. State your name and address. You can come up just after she does, sir, but we don't have any comments from the audience at this point, except coming to the podium to make a comment.
I just want to respectfully ask everyone to speak directly into their microphone.
Okay.
It's hard to hear out here.
Thank you. Yes, and for those that are online listening as well, speak directly into the mic for our audience members here, and then also for it to pick up in the recording. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate McMahon. I live at 151 Wedgwood Lane, which is just near the corner of Dodger and Wedgwood, so I live pretty much right across the street from the dog park. I want to thank you for continuing the hearing. We were out of town in May, although we did submit a letter with our concerns. And since that time, I also submitted an additional letter in opposition, primarily because of the scenic vista. And I'm not going to read the letter to you, but I do want to highlight a couple things in it. And primarily in response to the information that was presented regarding the viewpoints from Dodger Lane and Armory. I don't disagree with that. However, this is next to a public park, and the people that enjoy that scenic view are not, necessarily the residents or the people that are driving down Dodger Lane. They're the people who go to the dog park. And they go to that dog park for that view because it's unique to Whitefish. You have a notch in the Columbia Mountains where you can see the Glacier National Park. I have lived there almost 20 years. I routinely see people drive into that parking lot, set up tripods, and get pictures of the alpenglow, of rainbows, of the sun rising over that. There's not a lot of places in Whitefish where you can see that view and where everybody in the city and every visitor can go and have advantage of that view. So this isn't a view that we're talking about from Dodger Lane or Armory Lane, 900 feet away. We're talking about directly at the dog park. People are enjoying this. I think if you put another picture up, this is not 2 feet away. This is from the parking lot. You can see the fence there. This is a crude visual illustration. I took a picture of one of the hangars on Armory Road and inserted it there. So I think the height is approximately the same. There's a shed there that's about 10 feet, and so the picture is adjacent to the shed, which on the site plan it said it would be, and then I enlarged it, or shaped it so that it would be about double the size of the shed there. So this is approximately the height. It's not exaggerated. It's not 2 feet away. It's from the parking lot. And if you look at the before and after, you see that that view that people come from around the world to set up tripods and take pictures of is obscured. And so that is my concern. The CUP ordinance does say that the CUP should comply with the growth policy. And there's a very specific policy in there that talks about protecting scenic views and vistas, and this is certainly qualifies as such. I'd also point out that the CUP also talks about preserving community character. And I know that community character is a term that sometimes people say is hard to define. But my background is I'm a city planner. I have a degree in city planning. I've been practicing for 40 years. And I worked with the city on writing the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan. And we did surveys and focus groups, both when the plan was originally adopted and then most recently, last Monday, by the City Council. And the most important issue that came up was affordable housing, and not surprisingly. The second most important issue that came up was community character. And this came up 5 years ago when we wrote the plan. And so we spent quite a bit of time parsing through the comments to figure out what are people talking about. And we defined elements of community character, and they're in the plan that was adopted by City Council 5 years ago. And one of those elements was scenic vistas and scenic views. So the CUP does directly say that whatever the conditional use that's being requested should be in conformance with community character. And community character does include scenic views. And I'd also like to point out, in case you think, well, maybe that's not enough to turn this down just based on the scenery. You might be familiar with the bridge that was built in Big Fork. There was a big court case and they had to take the bridge out. I was also involved in that case because I wrote an expert report for that. And so this went to the Supreme Court. And one of the bases for turning that over was that the county did not consider the visual impact. So visual impact is something that should be considered. It's in the growth policy. Community character is required by the CUP. It is valued. This particular view here is unique, and it's unique to the dog park and can be enjoyed by everyone. And so building this would diminish that enjoyment. As over the last month, as we've been in the dog park talking to people, and we are daily users of the dog park, I was visiting with a woman who actually signed her letter, and she doesn't even live in Whitefish. She drives in from south of Whitefish. And she said when her husband was dying of cancer, they would come and they would sit in the park and they would sit on the bench and they would be able to enjoy this view of Glacier Park. And her husband has passed away and she still comes and she still sits on that bench because she enjoys that view from Armory Park, which would be obstructed by this airport hangar. Not from Armory Road, but the dog park. So the enjoyment would be diminished. There's no public benefit that would come from this. So I would just ask you to give serious consideration to the scenic vistas. It's in the growth policy. It's part of the CUP requirements. And just state my opposition to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please come up.
Good evening. My name is Bob Horn. I live at 151 Wedgewood Lane, also in Whitefish. Before I start on my own remarks, I want to underscore some things that my lovely wife, Kate, just presented. I, too, am a community planner with 44 years of experience, now retired, at least I think I am. I've heard it said several times that, oh, that's aesthetics, that's not land use, that's not economic development. Aesthetics has been a legitimate exercise of the police power upon which zoning is based for decades. There's court cases all over the country where you can find that aesthetics, if it's properly covered in the long-range planning documents and properly addressed in the regulatory framework, it is a legitimate exercise of the police power. What I'm here primarily to talk about is a letter that Kate and I both wrote and submitted, dated May 13th, 2024. And we raised several points in that letter, and I looked at the revised staff report, and I'm sorry, but I don't think any of those were addressed. I'd like to run through, I'm not going to read the letter, I'd like to run through very quickly the points that I think weren't covered, if I may do that. Quickly, the submittal narrative claimed that the proposed hangar enhances the public safety. Do we have a vandalism problem at the airport right now? And if so, the applicant should provide some data. Okay, what additional improvements can we expect? Experience tells us that if we upgrade a facility, use increases. Are we looking at paved runways in the future, fuel dispensing, pilot activated runway lights? I realize the only thing in front of you right now is the hangar, okay? But I'm saying these other things are out there and they're a possibility, and I think they're made more of a possibility if this conditional use permit is approved. Nearest fire hydrant is approximately 480 feet away. That's a long way to run hose, and I've always been told that a fire hydrant needs to be located so that the fire department, and they all have different capabilities, it needs to be within 140 feet of a building so that they can get to all parts of the building. So I don't know how that's going to work. Standard practice, as far as I know, has always been that you engage the fire department. You ask the fire department, what do we need in the way of fire suppression? What do we need in the way of fire prevention? And you put that right in the staff report so everybody knows what the score is, instead of, oh, we'll take care of that at the building permit stage. No, there was enough right here for the fire department to go through and give us a more thorough report than what they did. And what good is water, by the way, to suppress a fire fueled by oil or aviation fuel? I don't think it's much good. I think it's absurd to think that arriving passengers and pilots will negotiate the perimeter fencing and walk or run 450 feet to restrooms that may or not be open or may not have been properly cleaned. And again, those of us who use the park frequently have seen these restrooms vandalized and left in a disgusting condition. We're concerned that the arrivals will find a place to go in the open areas around the hangar. This has not been addressed. Visual impacts. We ask for a visual impact assessment. We ask for a visual impact assessment from the dog parks and from the affected residential areas. Crickets. We haven't heard anything. Are nighttime operations permitted? I think we did get an answer to that. Okay, they're not permitted right now, so I appreciate that answer. Most of the individual hangars associated with the single-family homes along the runway are far smaller than the proposed hangar, and the area around the proposed hangar cannot reasonably be described as having industrial nature, as the staff report claims. Also, there's no mention of section 11.338. How does that apply to this project? It's my understanding that this section appears to require any airport component to be no closer than 300 feet from any adjacent property. The hangar is proposed to be about 20 feet from adjacent property. This has not been addressed. That section has not been brought up. The letter concluded with a statement thanking the board for accepting the comments and concerns for the record, and a statement that we trust you will consider them carefully, but I don't think anybody has. It doesn't seem to me that most of the comments have been addressed at all. Further, we requested that no decision be made until these comments are addressed. Can somebody please tell me when and if that will ever happen? Does the board have any interest in having these comments addressed? Apparently not.
I would say I think they should be. I would say I think they should be.
Well,
By
thank
the
you.
staff.
I hope so.
Okay, so let's not have a lot of back and forth between members of the public and the board. We did ask the applicant a few questions, and we're hearing you, and then we'll discuss after. So thank you for your comment, and if you have any other ones, please give those as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, 32 Rocky Point Drive, Whitefish. My name is Matthew Daggett. Young member of the community, probably the youngest one here. Passionate for aviation, been a pilot for a few years. To address the security issue or vandalism issue, yes, there has been. December 7th last year, my vehicle got broken into. I flew to Helena to visit my fiance's grandpa. Weather turned south, was not able to turn around and come back that evening. Had to leave it overnight. I know overnight parking is not recommended there. I didn't have a choice. I was stuck in Helena. Came back the next morning and woke up at 7 a.m. to a call from the Whitefish Police Department that my Jeep had been broken into. Luckily, I don't leave anything in there of any value to be stolen. So, but that was a really big bummer to know that in our community that there's that type of vandalism happening, especially at an airport and a public park. So, as far as security issues, I think a hangar would be beneficial. I'd feel a lot more comfortable leaving an airplane there overnight if I had access to a hangar. So that's a little bit of issue. I've also talked to other pilots who no longer leave their airplane or park at Whitefish due to having an airplane broken. Another community member had an airplane window broken there, so a hangar would be beneficial for that way. As far as benefiting the community, I really think having e-bikes accessible would be good. First of all, I think you guys would be able to collect resort tax on that, and that would benefit the community. It also help people come into town. Right now, the only available option is bikes with flat tires or your 2 feet, and it's a walk. There's pilots who, walking into town 2 miles after a long flight and finding a hotel just isn't in it, so they probably don't come here, and that's detrimental to our community as far as income and revenue, which I think would benefit. Another point, I'm really grateful that Billy's taken action on this and going to do it out of his own pocket. This could be built by the city, and all of us here could be paying for it with our tax money, but Billy's taken it upon himself to spend his own money, and I appreciate that, Billy. Thank you. Currently, the tie downs are not very good, so at least improving the tie downs, would be something that should be done. But a hangar obviously is better for security reasons. If we're worried about large aircraft coming in here, like Corey said, insurance is one big thing. Grass, it's soft. You could talk to the state and do a weight restriction. There's many airports around that have weight restrictions on their runways. I'd be really hard pressed to think that there's anything over 8,000 pounds that would come in here, which would be a turbine aircraft. Like Corey said, he's lived on there for 7 years and he's seen one in all the landings. So weight restriction would definitely be something that could be talked about if you're worried about commercial operations or large airplanes coming in here. Currently, you can tie your airplane down there, and it could leak a quart of oil onto the grass, and no one would say a thing about it. No one would know. There's no current spillage, so a hangar would definitely reduce that, and would be able to mitigate it and control leakage or spilling. So as far as that goes, wounds, there's no first aid kit that I'm aware of there. There's no water. There's no alcohol. So having a facility and a pilot's lounge with some alcohol, first aid kit, I think would be definitely beneficial to every pilot and people in the area. I haven't lived here long enough to know if there has been a fire in the 60 years of that runway being in. I'd be really curious to know if there ever has been an airplane caught on fire there. And the concern of fire, I think, is very, very low. So to be hung up on fire suppression, I don't see that being a problem unless there has been fire issues previously that someone can attest to. There's no current restroom there to begin with. I've flown in there, left my airplane tied down there. It's, going to the parks, or I would personally be happy to pay for a porta potty out of my own pocket there if this hangar gets approved, and take care of that as long as I'm a member of the community. View, right there, we could be, if those same pictures were taken in front of the 15-foot tall sign, there would be no view whether there's a hangar or not, that sign. So moving 15 feet to the left, you'd have the same view. I understand from the dog park, there would be a little bit of a view obstruction, but like stated in the other elevations, the road itself is almost higher than the 23-foot. Thank you, Billy, for only making this 23-foot tall hangar and not the 35 that it could be, because that would definitely obstruct the view, and I would agree with that. I really hope this can go through. This would be really good for our community in many ways: economy, security for pilots coming in there, beneficial for people that come into town. You know, the commercial operations, I hope that never happens there. I think, you know, the jump planes that you guys or the city approves, they fly a lot. There's a lot of takeoff and landings, and I think that would be more takeoff and landings in a day than any of these members of a hangar or that community alone would do in a week. So that would definitely be something to consider, restricting all commercial operations. Other than that, I have no other comments. I appreciate your guys' service. Thank you.
I have one quick question for you before you leave. You mentioned something that I haven't heard much from the other people, specifically talking about the public benefit of having this facility constructed, as opposed to the considerations for the growth policy that would mitigate against it. I'm just curious what the airline, the pilot community thinks is the most significant public benefit associated with adding this facility, as opposed to a private benefit for just pilots.
So having accessibility to get into town, to spend more money here in town and collect more taxes that the whole community in general gets to use, and to benefit our town. I think that's one benefit. The other is, you know, having an attractant here, and having a place for people to go, and you know, if there's a hangar there and a pilot's lounge, there will be a lot more pilots in the area that will come and visit Whitefish and be able to enjoy the resort, the town, the restaurants, the hotels, and the revenue created from these people will benefit the whole community.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next public comment. Name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Greg Velazza. I live at 150 Dodger Lane. I spoke last time. Just a couple questions or thoughts. I keep hearing about community and public good. I'm having a little disconnect here, and I think your question was kind of thinking the way I was thinking, which was, as far as I understand this lease, there are 4 spots that will be leased. This isn't an open hangar for everybody from the state of Montana to fly into. So maybe I'm misunderstanding the lease, but it seems like this is a very limited use for 4 pilots. That's a question that I'm confusing with the community. If that's the case, the community I would like to talk about is, you know, one of the reasons I moved here is this was a great city, and I've gotten to know my neighbors quite well because of this hangar situation. You know, there are thousands of people that visit this dog park that I've become friends with. It's been kind of a central social location, and that will continue no matter whether this hangar is built or not. But this is kind of a morning scene where I got to know Bob and other folks. It's a special place, and I just want to think here about like weighing what we've had there for 30 years in that area, in the dog park that has been a huge value to our city, that has been noted in national publications like CNN and USA Today, and whether these 4 lease spots outweigh the community value of that, the view and the experience that people have there. I'm a little confused about this great public good of this hangar for everybody to fly into when it's, I think, being leased. So that's confusing to me. Other things I'll just bring up here is that 15-foot sign is not a wall that's 15-foot high. It's like, it's open, you can see through it. This is something I can see from my house, the only house on Dodger Lane. So, you know, it is something about perspective, and I appreciate that Billy's building this thing 24 and not 35, so I appreciate that, and that's something. But when you're in that dog park area, any building there, I walk through there 3 times a day with my dog. It's not gonna be the same. Anyway, I just want to thank you for your job you do here, and thanks for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up and state your name and address, and then give your comment.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Teig. I live on Whitefish, in Whitefish for 30 years, and I've lived in my home on 2nd Street at 1319 East 2nd Street. I have a dog. So I am going to represent the dog owners of Whitefish, and I don't know who on the board or anybody here has a dog. If you do, you can imagine how much enjoyment we, the public, the common people, all aspects of life here, the high, the mighty, the powerful, the rich, the poor, the common man, the workers, the tradespeople, we are all at the dog park. It's probably one of the most common place you can meet and talk to anybody, because we have dogs. That's what we have in common. That is a big population, and compared to a very small population that I am not involved with at all. I have no knowledge of. I've never flown in a private plane. I know nothing about aviation except the commercial, going wherever I come from on a vacation or something. So I'm talking on my point of view. I would like you to consider, please, the people of Whitefish when you think about what you will eliminate from the soul-nourishing moments that we all enjoy, and the beauty that has, and the effort and the volunteerism that has gone into making this park so special. One of which is the absolute spirituality of sitting there and looking into Glacier Park. I have no objection of somebody making an airplane hangar, but where you're going to put it has to be considered. I don't want to get involved in the aspect of aviation or what the needs of but it certainly is a very small percentage of people that will going to benefit from this, as opposed to the common good of we, the people of Whitefish. Please think of that and the pleasure and the benefit that we have all enjoyed since it's been opened, and it is continuing to be. I thank you for thinking about that in your decision and your approval or whatever you're going to be doing, but please think of us, not just a few. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? All right, come up and state your name and address and give your comments.
I'm Matt. I'm from 228 Park Avenue. I am probably the least amount of time in Whitefish as anybody here. Might compete for the youngest individual also. I got into aviation not that long ago, and I was very surprised about the community that people are so worried about here that is actually built around that airport. And people ask about the community benefit. There's more people that fly and live in Whitefish than you probably imagine. And they go to GPIA or they go down to Kalispell City to fly in and out of. And I think that some of the community benefit to this would be bringing a few more planes up here that aren't going to be flying commercially every day, or people like me that want to buy a plane and bring it to Whitefish so I can be in my community and fly and help foster some more community involvement in it would be a definite benefit to the community. On top of that, there's a lot of talk about how it's going to affect the dog park. I'm a dog owner by marriage, and we walk at the dog park all the time. And I granted, I'm a pilot, so I spend a lot of time looking up and watching people come in and land. But I think if we can get some more people and get a little closer to the community, so when little kids are skating at the skate park or they can walk around and if someone's at the hangar and they see something shiny, they can walk out and have an outreach and have a conversation about why there's an airport and what kind of community it can foster here. And just help grow the Whitefish aviation community as much as any, like the dog park community. It's just another section of it. And it's not the rich man's sport or anybody's sport. Anybody can have involvement in it. And I think that having 4 extra spaces is a good opportunity to just keep adding a little more and a little more to help blend the communities together. And it's horrible at public speaking, sorry, not my strong suit, but I think that it would be a good way to start blending things together. And if they are leased, or if they are, like a pilot flies in and there's an open spot and they can get out of the way, I wouldn't leave my plane, if I get one, up outside. I wouldn't leave my car out there with that kind of risk. So I think it would just add a little bit more safety to it, but it also would help bring things together a little better. I am personally for him building the hangar. I don't think it would have that much visual detraction from what's already there, especially for the dog park for walking around it. That's just my opinion, and I hope that you guys can see the benefits to the community of trying to blend things together and foster something that is it's been Whitefish for a long time, longer than I've ever been here, and I really hope that this would add to growing another segment of the community.
Thank you. All right, is that the close of public comment? Okay, you can come up and make one more short comment, and then we'll close with the applicant if there's anything that you want to clarify.
No, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I did fail to make some comments earlier, and I'll be brief. We're arguing about visual impact, and we requested a visual impact assessment once again. I mean, Kate did everybody's homework for them as best she could. There will be a visual impact to the dog park from a portion of the dog park, at least the north part, and certainly back to where the gazebo is. Yesterday afternoon, we all know what a beautiful day it was. I was out at the dog park putting up posters telling people about this because people said, I never knew about this. When I was putting up those posters, I got quite an audience. And people looked at that and said, what's going on? What's going on? I explained that. And, oh my God was the answer. Didn't have one person come up and say, hey, that's a great idea. We need a hangar. We need a 5,800 square foot hangar right there blocking the view into Glacier National Park. That view and those vistas are public. As Kate pointed out, those are free. Not too many things are free about living here in Whitefish. That's free. It shouldn't be bought. It shouldn't be sold. It should remain free. And it's a vista that people enjoy. People that don't even live here, they don't even live anywhere near here, have come here to visit or come here to visit people and gone to the dog park, and they're familiar with those vistas. So I can't say enough about how important that is. The dog park is a community gathering place. From an urban design standpoint, there's no question. It is a community gathering place. I go twice a day with our dog. I've got my afternoon friends. My dog's got her morning friends. You can see gatherings and conversations all around. I have a question for Dave, if I may. And Dave, this has to do with the tie downs. I understand from the testimony that the tie downs are, maybe some are inoperable, at least in bad shape. Would they even need a permit to replace the tie downs or even add more tie downs?
No, they would not.
Thank you. So that's always an option. I mean, they could add more tie downs at any time or replace the ones they had. They don't need a permit to do that. Thank you for letting me make those additional comments. And
you're welcome.
thank you for your service.
All right. If the applicant has anything else that they'd like to address, because we have had so many questions posed, I'll give you guys just a couple of minutes to come back up. In particular, I would like to know, I know that you have 2 planes that you're looking to house permanently there, I think you said, and then 2 that would be open, and I think the question of, are you looking to lease those on a yearly basis or as people come in? You can answer that.
Yeah, so there would be one space would be available for me. Two others would be kind of an annual lease, and then I'd like to have one space available for someone that flies in for the evening or say the weekend, needs a place to keep the plane out of weather, hail, damaging hail, and just a safe place to keep it. But I would like to keep one space available for nightly, weekly kind of thing.
All right, thank you.
And then as far as the dog park goes, I own two dogs. They're 11 months old. I've spent a lot of time at the dog park this last fall and winter, so I'm familiar with the dog park, and I'm very familiar with where I'm proposing this hangar. And as far as the visual impact of it and where you're standing at the dog park, I understand, the concerned people blocking their view of the Columbia Mountains and the ski area, Glacier Park through Bad Rock Canyon. If you're standing on the easement that the state has access to the dog park to the parking lot, that's where the majority of the view is lost from this hangar. If you're standing right behind the hangar, yeah, you're gonna lose those views. If you're anywhere south in the dog park, you're not gonna lose any view of Bad Rock Canyon south, and you'll never lose view of the ski area or ski resort. So, but I do understand the visual. There would be a building there. If you're standing behind it, you're gonna lose the view.
All right, thank you for your time. We'll close public comment now, and I'll turn to the board for a motion so that we can begin to deliberate on this.
I'll move to deny the conditional use permit.
Do we have a second? Okay. John, you can speak to the reasoning, or
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I'll start with the letter of James Dodkin, which is May 7th this year. The update done by the planning board staff is May 16th, so, and there was no answer or response to the issues Dodkin raised. And so maybe we can rely on this letter. He says at the second paragraph on the first page, this is a large commercial-size hangar, something you see at a paved airport, not a short backcountry grass strip like Whitefish Airport. Large hangars and hangar doors can house large planes and helicopters. So, and then on the second page, he says, as a commercial building, businesses will now be able to run their companies out of the hangar. Not so sure about that. Scenic rides on the helicopter. That, to me, looks like a fair possibility. As Mr. Van Horn noted, it will grow. Everything around Whitefish about tourism grows. So I think we should consider that. So if this turns into a very limited heliport for ferrying rich people in and out, maybe scenic tours, that could be a nightmare for the people who live nearby. There was a proposal for a commercial heliport on Highway 93 south of Whitefish. I was about a half a mile from that, but I wasn't in the flight pattern, so the impacts wouldn't have been severe at our house. But we hired a acoustical engineer from Bozeman, there is one there, who does helicopter impact studies. And he did a preliminary study, and it's a matter of where the flight pattern is and how that extends across the neighborhoods. Helicopters do take off at a low grade. They'd use a lot of fuel if they had to go straight up. And so houses a quarter of a mile away would be disrupted. And the helicopters have a loop noise that it enters our house. I imagine it enters a lot of your houses. So even a very limited helicopter business would severely disrupt the dog park and the neighborhoods around. So we have to look at what this conditional use permit might allow. As we know, the business may grow. Mr. McKinney may intend it just to be 4 leased spaces. But it's also possible that he might sell or transfer the business, transfer the lease to someone else who wants to max it out with a limited helicopter operation, which would, I think, really disrupt the area. So for this permit, we have to look at what are the possible uses, not just what is planned today in June of 2024, but what this might grow into in 10 years. Because if it's permitted under the conditional use permit, it can be done. So I haven't seen anything indicating that a helicopter business couldn't be done there. And I looked at the lease, and section 8A says, lessee may use the hangar for a commercial hangar. Well, and it's for the storage of aircraft. Well, helicopters are considered aircraft. So there's really no limit, not much limit anyway, on the commercial use that it may grow into. So for those reasons, I've made this motion to deny the conditional use permit.
Thank you, John. Toby, would you like to give reasoning for your second?
Yeah, I have a few comments. Regarding the fire hydrant and the water thing, that's up to the building department to decide whether there is enough fire hydrants and close nearby or anything like that. Public benefit, that's something that doesn't seem to be really resonating with me, in that from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people that gave public comment, 3 of them were in favor of it. All 3 of them are pilots. So it seems to be that everyone that's in favor of this is a pilot and that would be happy to use it or take advantage of it. There's not too much other public benefit to anyone else in the community, and it seems to be benefiting the applicant for the purpose of housing his plane, renting out another 2 or 3 spaces for whatever commercial gain he might have. And then the other issue is the e-bike benefit. The e-bikes aren't a benefit to the community, they're a benefit to the pilots that come in there. And so that's a few of the things. And the only other thing that I would say is that Whitefish is a very community supportive, or the community is very supportive of things. We have built the dog park, the wave, the soccer fields, the indoor ice rink. I think it's the only one in Montana. Everything was through community benefit, donations by individuals, big people or others. And at the end of the project, when it's been done, it's been donated and turned over to the city. And I would say if there's going to be big public benefit of this, that would sway me in the advantage towards approving it.
Thank you, Toby. Any other comments from the board before we take a vote on this? All right. So we'll go ahead and vote at this point. Okay, all in favor? Should we do a roll call on this or just raise of hands? All right, all in favor of the motion to deny, raise your hand. All right, the motion passes unanimously. And that will conclude this item on our agenda. This will be going to City Council July 1st, 2024. So anybody who's interested can come to City Council to see that meeting, and the applicant will obviously be there again. And I think the email indicated that the Montana Department of Aeronautics representative will also be at that. So that will be good for everyone to get their perspective as well. All right, so now.
Could I make one quick comment for the record?
Sure.
Maybe a little out of order, I appreciate it. So there was a member of city council.
Mic on, mic on.
Thank you. There was a member of city council that was here tonight and was talking about the impact that our previous decision had on city council on the process. And I didn't hear all of it, but what I did hear, it sounded like we were being castigated for not having read the packet and for having held up the process unnecessarily. And personally, I just like to take exception to that. I do read and prepare for these meetings. I do take the process seriously, and I object to the characterization that was presented. That's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Scott. Objection noted, and I'm sure will be responded to in good time from Giuseppe. All right, so moving on to the second item on our agenda for public hearing, WZTA 2402. And this is a request by the City of Whitefish to amend zoning regulations, section 11-8-1. Okay. We can take a short recess for just a couple of minutes, if that's okay. That'd be great. Okay, just a few minutes and we'll come back. You're welcome. All right, we'll resume in about 3 or 4 minutes.
We could do it briefly because I don't know anything about sign policy. I defer to the city council on that. And maybe everybody else, there's nobody opposing this, so. Anyway, maybe you have to go through your whole spiel anyway.
Coming back? He's gone, so everyone's here? All right. Okay, so we will resume our meeting, our regularly scheduled meeting. And we will start with number 2 on our agenda, WZTA 2402, which is a request by the City of Whitefish to amend city zoning regulations, Section 11.8.1, Appendices, Appendix F, sign districts, Appendix G, sign standards table, and to update that table to include business service sign district and revise the sign district boundaries. And we will hear from Dave Taylor for this.
All right, good evening, board members. Thanks to Toby's comments, I am going to read this very slowly. So when we adopted the Highway 93 South Plan, there was a couple items in there that were highlighted as implementation items with regard to the sign district. There's certain areas along, well, you can see on your screen, if you have your screens turned on, what the existing sign district boundaries are, and they're very broad. There's areas of our Old Town district that go almost to the high school. There's areas in the highway district that go into residential areas. And they don't really follow the zoning boundaries underneath. They're just very broad districts. And so one of the things that the Highway 93 plan looked at is we have commercial signage that's meant for speeds up to 45 miles an hour in the commercial district of the B2 all the way down Spokane Avenue where the speed limit's dropped to 25. And where the speed limit is 25, you don't need nearly as big of a sign as you do in areas where you're going 55 miles an hour. And so to rectify that, we have brought forward some changes to the sign district boundaries. If you look at this map, if you look at the area downtown, which is the Old Town district, the orange portion of that is what we're proposing to change it to. Where the dash lines are in there that are orange, or where the existing boundary goes to. And so there's portions of, BNSF property on there that, aren't even in city limits where, we can't even enforce sign boundaries, all the way to Pine Street and the high school. We're removing all that out of there. There's some portions of the community resort district that are over residential neighborhoods along 3rd Street that we're recommending being removed. And then down, if you look in the commercial highway district, there's large portions of that area that aren't zoned for commercial use that would be removed from. And then further down in the city, if you look at, we have just annexed a certain portion outside city limits south of Highway 40 for a new development there, and we're applying the business service district to that. Right now, its current sign code doesn't have any sign code for that area. And that business service district right now only applies out where Dillon Road and Highway 40 intersect, and that's way outside of our planning jurisdiction currently, or our city limits. But it used to be in our planning jurisdiction. We're just going to keep that there, even though we'll never apply it there. But we also are applying it to portions of Big Mountain, because that is on our radar to annex in the next couple of years. And we already have sign districts up there, and we're just sort of reducing them to those areas that are zoned commercial where signage would occur. So that's part of the changes that we're recommending. And then things not moving. There we go. Yeah, I mentioned down at Highway 40. And then in addition to those boundary changes, we have another part of their appendix, which is Appendix G, which is a summary of all of our sign regulations. And whenever the business service district was created, for some reason it wasn't added in there. And so we're just amending that table to add the business service district sign regulations. The sign regulations are in the code, it just was never added to that table, which is in the appendix. So that's basically the summary of our changes that we're recommending. If you look in the growth policy portion, it's the Highway 93 South Corridor Plan. One of the goals was revise the sign district along Baker Avenue to be consistent with speed limits And the objective was review appropriateness of resort community business or Old Town Sign District for use in segment A, which is that section of Spokane Avenue. And then objective 6 talks about improving commercial signage in segment B, which is basically the B2 zoning district that goes out to Highway 40. And so, and that objective is revise the sign district along Baker Avenue north of 13th Street to be consistent with the speed limits. And so this recommended sign code appendix, it's really just the appendix of the sign code amendment, is something that the findings do support and staff does recommend approval of.
All right, thank you, Dave. Any questions for staff about this revision?
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Also, thank you for all this entire planning staff's diligent work on research and coming up with the staff reports. I mean, you're adhering to the book and everything. And I just have one question regarding the sign districts or the signs. Many years ago, on my first residence on the planning board, we approved sign ordinances of, I think that was when we made it no interior lit signs and a few things. I'm talking 25, 28 years ago. And I recollect as part of that, there was a restriction on sandwich board signs. You know, the ones that fold up and those were restricted to be put only in front of and adjacent to the business. Do you recollect that? And is that?
Yeah, I mean, each business, it talks about each site is allowed to have a sandwich board sign.
Yeah. But what I'm wondering is, how come the farmer's market puts theirs wherever they want?
So that's a special permit that was issued by the city manager. It's not part of the sign code. Because those would be considered off-premise signs technically, but that's a community event signage which the city council approves.
Okay, I was curious. That's been sticking with me for 28 years.
Yep, and that is one thing that this change would change, is there are some businesses currently, along Spokane Street that currently are in the Old Town sign district. The Old Town is the only place that allows sandwich boards, and that area is shrinking a little bit. And so there might be a couple businesses along there that have been used to putting sandwich boards up that would no longer be able to. Just FYI, but.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Dave, would that be like the Moose sandwich board for their?
Which one?
Burger night for the Moose.
So that, they got a special permit for that one.
Right.
They came in and got a variance from the sign code from the city council to be able to put that out there.
So
way
that
back in 2009 or something like that. So they'd be able to continue to put that sign because they had a variance for that.
So this would still be possible under these changes for some of those existing businesses that may be used to this?
Well, if they've been historically doing a sandwich board sign, and I can't really think of one that it would affect particularly, but it's possible. There's a couple of businesses on Spokane that are, I'm thinking of the guy that has the bike rental stuff, which he's, that he probably shouldn't be having one anyway. No offense to him, but it's, outside the B2 commercial zone, which is where those things are supposed to be. They're supposed to be for people that are walking. They're not supposed to be aimed towards automobiles, which is why they're not allowed on Wisconsin and other places.
Well, the music school has their sandwich board up. That's permissible then? Because was that grandfathered in?
You can look at that map. I think they would still be in the Old Town, but I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
And secondly.
And they're moving as well, so.
True. Secondly, are these sign changes, have they been put into the budget? Have they been approved?
The budget? Why would the budget be affected?
Costly.
It's not costing any.
Okay.
It's just an amendment to the code, so doesn't affect the city's budget anyway.
Thank you.
All right, any further comments on this particular? Yeah. Any
No.
further comments? No.
No.
Toby?
Can I make a motion to approve? Oh my God, I don't have it here. WZTA 24-02, as written and presented by staff.
Yes, you may. And you have, can I get a second, please?
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Well done. Moving on.
Good.
Yeah, we already did. All right, so good and welfare, any matters from the board? Seeing none, any matters from the staff?
I think we kind of covered everything. Alan gave you the update on, you won't have a work session next month, but in August we will, on the growth policy update. Other than that, yeah, I don't really have any updates. Yeah, there will be a meeting. Can't remember what they
August.
are. No, so the July planning board will happen, just not a work session.
All right, and poll of those who will be here next month. Does anyone, okay, everyone, great. So those who are here will be here again. Those who are not here, it remains to be seen.
I'll be flogged. No.
That's in the minutes now. All right, let it be done. Okay, so this adjourns our meeting for tonight. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for presiding
Thank you,
over
staff.
us and keeping us from going amok.